Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel, Micah Let's Play. And guess who I am? I'm Micah, because who else would I be? But as you guys can see, I am once again joined by an awesome person, a new friend of mine that I met last year, and honestly, one of the coolest guys I know. So without further ado, I'm going to let this man introduce himself. My dude, the floor is yours.
Hey everybody. I don't know if I'll live up to that esteem of an intro, but it's still flattering nonetheless. My name's Tommy. I run my own small channel called Urzaban where I do video game stuff and let's play and some tabletop stuff. And me and Micah have pretty much been friends for the better part of like 6, 7 months now, roughly.
That's
And
it.
honestly, no one better to have a good highbrow Resident Evil discussion with.
The operative word is highbrow.
Yeah. Make yourself sound more intelligent even when you're not. That's how you win.
And that's how the world works, kids. That's how the world works. Um, so it's some of you might be wondering, well, how did you two meet each other? Well, it's from this guy. Angel Arts. Well, Angel Arts opened this really cool tabletop. I auditioned, I got in, and one of the coolest guys I met, and one of the first guys I met in the Angel Arts community was this dude. He helped me with my mock interview. A whole thing happened. Link will be in the video description so you can check it out, laugh at me all you like, and it's going to be amazing. But the real reason why we're here is that we're going to talk and have an intimate and educated discussion about Resident Evil Infinite Darkness. And I just can't wait. So with that said, Tommy, I'm just gonna hand the floor to you. And so let's just
Okay.
dive into this, man. Let's just get into this.
All right. So, yeah, pretty much Resident Evil Infinite Darkness is the newest animated property by Capcom. But the cool thing about this is that where the previous three were just one off movies that are like at separate, different canonical points in the timeline, Capcom was going to go for more of a continuous series with Netflix that was going to star Claire and Leon uncovering this conspiracy theory in the mid 2000s and be an episodic ordeal. Now, the actual effectiveness, we can talk about that as we go on, but that was the premise, and everyone, myself and Micah, were very excited leading up to it because the advertising material did its job.
Facts. Oh my God. And the thing is, the story. I don't know. And for those of you who have never seen it before, stop this video, go watch it because there's spoilers all the way through this. So you've been warned.
Oh, yeah.
So when we get to the story, it basically starts where you're seeing Leon. He's finally being recruited to work for the president. Adam, and he's been recruited with the soldier that survived. What's the name of that place? I always call it funny. I always say the name.
That's actually an interesting thing that Capcom always does. I don't know if you've noticed it before, but they'll have like the big A-list countries be their normal, like vanilla country selves, like the US, Russia, China, Australia. But
Mhm.
like smaller secondary countries will have like close but somewhat off names. Like in Resident Evil 6, Estonia was Edonia. And
Yeah.
then and this, it was like Pakistan, except it's New Pananstam.
Like why? Like what? But you know what? That was the name of the place, New Pananstam. I like to call Penis Land. Okay, whatever.
God damn it.
Just saying. So the story starts where you see this soldier survives, Jason, and he's like this war hero, and they're at this council, and this really hot Asian chick is there, Shin Mei, and just like Leon, I was thirsty for her as well, but we're moving on from the story. Afterwards, after this whole scene happens where there's an outbreak in the White House. Oh my God, we've never seen this happen before, and we have our first zombie encounter with Patrick, who I think is AKA super cute. And he has this zombie encounter, and Leon saves him. It's a whole thing, and then we switch to Claire, where Claire is in New Penis Land or Penakistan or whatever. And if you're from that
Yeah,
country, I
New
am so
Pananstam.
New Pananstem. If you're from the original name of that country, I am so sorry. I am not trying to insult you. I just don't, I can't say the name properly, so I'm just running with it. And then from there, Claire sees this little boy in a wheelchair, and he gives her these clues about what happened. It's an outbreak. And then our two main characters, Claire and Leon, voiced by the same voice actors from Resident Evil 2, Nick Pacalitos and Stephanie Pinello, who are absolutely fantastic. I love their performances. I just like what they did. And then Claire and Leon meet up, and Claire's like, Leon, this looks like this is a new thing. It could be an outbreak. This could be Raccoon City all over again. And Leon knows what happened the night before, but because he's in the Secret Service, he can't really tell this information to a civilian. So he doesn't say anything. And then from there, they're on like a submarine. And the one thing I will say, and one of my favorite episodes was the submarine scene where you see Leon, Jason, and Shin Mei all together. And it's like stirring up the mystery. And to me, it was the second episode that really drew me in. The first episode was like, oh, just nostalgic vibes. Yay, zombies. But it was in episode 2 while they were in the submarine and they were all talking. And Leon has this very interesting conversation with Jason about fear. And I have an issue with that, but I'll explain why once we get to like our feelings and thoughts on the show. And then, of course, Leon being Leon, because there was a female in the room, he just flirts with her. Not to mention she was Asian. And honestly, I felt that should have been Ada in disguise, but oh well, they didn't do that. And then, of course, an outbreak happens on the submarine, and I thought it was pretty cool. And and we'll touch on the Easter eggs later, but there was an Easter egg that happened in the submarine that I thought was really, really cool. Also, I really liked why like Jason and Shin Mei were doing what they were doing. The reasons made sense, but the execution was just. We'll talk about that later. The execution was awful. Yep. Then Leon, they eventually split up. Leon finds them. He kills Jason. Shin Mei runs away because she's cute and, she has to have a man chase her and it has to be Leon. Then somehow he tracks this chick down all the way down to her base. I don't know how he does it. Leon is secretly a superhero. That's what the S stands for. And Leon S, it's Leon Super Kennedy. Let's just be real about it. He finds this chick at her compound. Turns out her brother, was it her brother or her uncle? I think it was her brother that was like still a zombie or something weird like that. And then we have a revelation because it's revealed that Shin Mei and Jason had a history together and they knew each other, which I found pretty cool. And then from there, Leon discovers this. Somehow Shin Mei becomes a dainty flower. I'll talk about that later. And then we get to the crux of the matter. We get to where like Leon and Claire finally meet back up in this facility. Our villain has been revealed, which is Wilson. He reveals himself as the villain. And honestly, that was the weakest episode to me, was the final episode. And I'll explain why when we get into it. But from there, Tommy, I've been running my mouth this entire time. What are your thoughts and feelings?
Okay, so if we're going to just gloss through episodes 1 through 4, for me, I had a bit of like a descending appreciation of the show where like for me, episode 1 was like the peak. Then as we went further in, I just was getting less and less invested because I feel like the first episode does a good job of showing, hey, this is Leon post Resident Evil 4. He's not like the rookie cop that he was back in Revelations 2, Resident Evil 2. I just want another Revelations game. I can't get it out of my brain. But regardless, this is him post his first 2 games, and Leon's efficient. He's well maneuvering, intelligent. This is showing him after that event. Then we also get cool lore stuff with Claire, with how she's doing humanitarian stuff with TerraSave and how that organization started, which would actually be a really relevant thing later on in the series because TerraSave is a big organization that Claire's like one of the founding members of. Mm-hmm. So I thought the first episode, in setting up the conspiracy around the White House, what's going on, introducing the new characters, and having nice Easter eggs that would be prevalent factors later on, was the best the show ever got.
Yeah.
Episode 2, I feel like the twist was really good with them going to go do the covert mission in China and actually discover the stuff. And it's like, oh no, Jason and Shin Mei really have their own agenda that they're working on, and they really give zero fucks about the government here. And then
facts.
As you do.
Right?
And then they explain to Leon, who has this whole little like conniption fit when he talks to Jason, where they're talking about how like society's getting to this really complacent step about how fear is the root of terror and all this other stuff. And then Leon basically confesses his involvement with Raccoon City, again, some talking around with Jason. And then I really both like and hate this scene quite a bit because Capcom really kind of shoots themselves in the foot with consistency in the lore is a thing that happens because before it's like everyone knows Raccoon City and what happened there. I mean, fucking Lewis and Resident Evil 4 knew that it was a viral outbreak, and he's just some fucking Spaniard out in the middle of nowhere. So, like, if he knows about it, and the fact that there was an actual nuke involved on U.S. soil, there's only so much covering up that could really happen there, given that there were other survivors beyond just beyond Hunk, Leon, Claire, and Chris.
Right? Just saying.
Jill. So they have this whole discussion about how things are being covered up and how like this really terrible thing. And then the betrayal happens where you find out their agenda, the sub's taken out, Leon starts finding out all this stuff, and this makes up the bulk of it. Meanwhile, we're getting little artifacty bits with Claire where she's investigating what happened with Jason's unit out in New Penn with the whole outbreak that happened there. And this was really cool and I enjoyed it. There just wasn't really enough of it.
Yes, continue. I'm so sorry.
And then we get to the final episode. And while I did enjoy the final episode in the entertainment factor, as a story, it completely messifies the show just to get to the ending.
That's it. And that's like the biggest problem with the final episode. That's like the biggest problem with the final episode. And then there were just some story parts that just made no sense, whatsoever. But now that you guys understand the story, and if you've seen the episodes and you understand what we're talking about, now we're just going to switch gears and we're going to talk about the characters and kind of like our thoughts and feelings on some of the characters. And then from there, and then from there, we're just gonna kind of like talk about some of the Easter eggs, and then we're just gonna wrap this whole bad boy up with our final thoughts. And if you understand where the conversation is going, I think you know where our thoughts and feelings are. But with that said, let's talk about Leon a little bit now. And again, since I'm talking a lot, I'm gonna let Tommy. What were your thoughts and feelings? I know you said he was well groomed, he was cooler, he was more like Resident Evil 4 Leon. So.
I really like it because I felt like the show did a good job of showing like the transitions that happen with Leon's character with this bit. Like he's at an in the middle point where he's not really like the new wide-eyed person that he was in 2, but 4 has happened, so he's more experienced, he's more intelligent, and he's more physically capable than he was before. The problem that I have with Leon is that they made Leon more of the objective character of the show, where like anytime plot stuff has to progress, it's happening through Leon. So it's pretty much like we get Leon a little late, then he just kind of hogs the spotlight the rest of the show. And I know why Capcom did it. It's because Leon's like the most popular of like the 4 original characters. So whenever Capcom has Leon, they're like, look at Leon, look at him. He's right there. So that leads to Leon being overly efficient and more efficient than he really should be, to the point of where like they weren't really able to write around it. So there's bits that would happen in the show just without any real connective tissue that makes Leon more of a Gary Stu or Mary Stu than he would have been had you just pushed those events out and showed them happen in real time.
Right.
Like, for me, a good example of that's the part in the submarine with all the rats where it shows Leon discovering the rats, because it's not like Leon does anything wrong or superhero-ish, potentially, but it gets to the part of where like he takes out the horde of rats coming at him where they're all running at him. Then he hops up and hits the electricity thing and arcs all the water on the floor, killing them, which is cool and it looks great. Yes. But then they just cut to Leon linking up with Jason and Shen Mei like a scene later. So it's like, how did he get off of the roof there when the electricity was arcing the floor right beneath him less than 5 minutes ago, when in reality it would have happened anyway, probably logically. It just, we don't see that, so you're just like, oh, I guess he's a superhero.
Here we are.
And I mean, this this wasn't even just a Leon-centric problem. It just Leon takes the brunt of it because he's on screen more than anyone else. Like a good example of this is the acid scene with Claire, where she's in the
Yes.
chair and the acid's rising up, and you see her get her like part of her legs free, but she doesn't get her arms free. Then when it comes back to her, it's her like getting up off the top of the chair where she's already gotten out of the situation, but like her legs are still kind of in the acid with how the frame looks, but like
Mm-hmm.
she's fine. So you're like, I guess it just works out.
and, and
So
honestly, yeah, go for it. Go for it.
yeah, and I was just gonna say, overall, I do like Leon. I'll admit that he's like one of my two favorite characters out of the Resident Evil continuity.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I feel like the show did Leon no favors because they made him more unintelligent than he would have been in certain scenes, or made him overly intelligent and efficient to where it's like we're just making the plot happen through this character, so he becomes less of a character and more of just a driving force.
And that's my biggest issue with Leon. And again, no tea, no shade, no pink lemonade. For anyone who's a Leon fan, Leon has just never been my favorite character. It's not that I don't like Leon. Let me be clear about that. I just never cared for him as a character. So seeing a character that I don't really care that much for as the bulk of the show for me, and that's when it started to decline because I'm like, okay, we're getting too much Leon, and my favorite character is Claire. So you tease me with Claire having this intense investigation, and we just get breadcrumbs. And I was just like, really? And I didn't really want to call Leon a Gary Stu or a Mary Sue, but I agree. There was too many moments where it was just like, especially when he first hits the rat, those rats were moving almost at like breakneck speed, and Homeboy just like caught it in like 2 seconds. I get it. Everybody has reflexes. You got adrenaline going. You know, my suspension of disbelief isn't like I can't like imagine it, but the whole thing, like you said, with the rats, I'm right there with you, bro. I'm right there with you. And there's more of it, especially if you've never seen the show and you're just watching this. Wait till you see it, and then you listen to what we're saying, and you'll be able to see everything we're talking about. And it's really bad. And moving on into Claire, I really felt that she got the short end of the stick because you introduce her in such an interesting way where she's investigating what's happening in New Panempistan, forgive me, and she's seeing this little boy. He drives this horrible scene of these zombies eating people, and she's in the White House trying to do her job. She sees Leon, and I was thinking it was going to be a real back and forth kind of thing. Like we see Leon doing the action and Claire doing the investigating. Claire spends most of her episodes inside of a room on her computer putting things together. It looks really cool. Like it looks really cool. And it shows like Jill's an investigator. And like Tom was saying earlier about her history with TerraSave, it was awesome. And I got excited about those things, especially when you see her in Jason's friend's what do you call it? I guess you would call it a cabin, a log cabin. And she discovers the truth about the soldiers, how they're dying. They're killing themselves because of what happened to them when they were on their mission. They got infected, so they injected themselves. Well, I guess what, like an antiviral solution thing that keeps them alive, but also at the same time controls the virus or whatever. Again, all those moments were so cool, but like Tommy said, they were so far few and in between. It was almost like when Claire was showing, like, oh my God, she's in the show still. That's kind of my honest opinion. But what do you think, Tommy? How are you feeling? Am I the only one?
Okay. So out of the four original characters from like the original trilogy being Chris, Leon, Jill, and Claire,
Mm-hmm.
my two faves was Leon and Jill. Then
Mm-hmm.
right after that, like being very close in second was Chris and Claire.
Mm-hmm.
And overall, I really do like that we're getting at least some more stuff with Claire because Claire's kind of been abused as far as the series goes, where like she was really in two, and then she was really in like two and Code Veronica, and then that's been about it up until
Yeah.
Revelations 2.
Yeah.
So I was happy that we're getting more with Claire in like the mid 2000s era that shows more of what she's doing, TerraSafe forming. And I really do think that they did good with Claire with where she was.
Mm-hmm.
But there was so little of Claire to where ultimately I feel like it was just a waste of time in the end, where like that could have gone into making the current show better and more fleshed out rather than just stopping where they are to have an investigative bit with Claire. That's nice, very well executed, but doesn't really matter because Leon's bit's gonna explain this stuff to you in like the next 20 minutes anyhow. So this just feels like connective tissue where they really couldn't think to put anything. And this stems from the show's bigger issue of it really should have been a proper full season of like 8 to 12 episodes.
Exactly.
But with the little bit that Claire does and like the couple fight scenes that she's in, I feel like she's pretty good.
Yeah. And I just wish there was more of her personally, because I'm a Claire fan, so I wanted more. But I agree with you, Tommy. I agree with you on all of that stuff. So next up is Jason. So what are your thoughts and feelings on the character Jason?
There was such a missed opportunity with Jason as a character, in my opinion. Mainly because when Jason shows up, he's new. Like, we don't know whether he's going to be dead or alive by the end of the show. And this is where I feel like prequel properties do their best stuff, is where you introduce this new stuff. So, like, if you put them later on in the series, you have more connective tissue for your entire universe.
Exactly.
So Jason, I was relatively excited for because they were showing with how he's kind of going through like the Chris 5 and 6 arc where it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I've got all this PTSD, but like he's in a different situation where he's legit just been infected and he's having to live with that on the day to day because he's taking the inhibitors from when he was in New Pananstam and got attacked, saving Shenmei's brother. So I feel like Jason would have been a better main character, and having Leon and Claire as supporting characters is what I would have really loved. And I do think with the bits that Jason has are good, it just suffers from the fact of like they arbitrarily make him into the endgame villain, so they do things with him where it really just doesn't make any sense. Like at the end and right before the final fight scene where he mutates, where he's decided he's not going to take the inhibitors anymore, where he straight up smashes Defense Secretary Wilson on the ground. I'm like, why didn't he just kill Wilson? Like, you know, of like everything happening, how much he's made this man suffer, making him do all of these illegal black operations in the name of like Tricell and everything else. It's like he would have just like snapped and murdered him, and that would have been fitting. And then they do other things where like he's in full primal mode of being like, I need to show them me so the world knows what true bioterror is after he's mutated. But then like he just more or less becomes less efficient for the sake of the plot.
That part, but continue.
Well, especially like where they hit where him and Shenmei have like a thing, like right before he kills Shenmei, where like she's holding him and being like, I don't want you to die for this and everything. And he shows sympathy, like he's about to have another misstep with that. And then he just straight up just like murderifies her the next 2 seconds over. It's like, okay, you don't kill the person you care about, but you won't kill the guy that's made your life and your friend's life a living hell for the last like 6 years.
Come on now.
And ultimately, while I do really like him, I feel like the fact that he's just an endgame villain to be the final boss was ultimately his downfall. Like, had he stayed alive past this property, they could have done so much more of him. But the fact that he's just, the fact that he turns evil for really no good reason, and then they just kill him, it just feels like a complete opportunity wasted.
Honestly, that's Jason in a nutshell. And honestly, he had 2 attempts to kill Leon and didn't do it. So that's another thing. He kills his girl, doesn't kill the secretary, and doesn't kill Leon. Yeah, Jason. And one thing I will say, kind of going back on Leon, I will say the only thing about Leon I liked when he was having that conversation with Jason is when he still felt pretty raw about the citizens of Raccoon City. So it still shows he still had some of that, like he still wants to be the classic good guy and help everybody. That's the only thing, that's one of the good things I will say about Leon. Now, going back, I meant to say that earlier, but going back to Jason, I really felt like, he should have been the primary character. To me, he should have been. And then Leon and Claire
Yeah.
there kind of like, as like you said, auxiliary characters to kind of help move the plot along, but Capcom didn't want to do that. So let's move on over to Shinmei. This is my honest opinion of Shinmei. She's the typical girl in every anime, manga, you name it. She starts off real cool, but somewhere along the way, she meets the primary male character and her character starts to dip dramatically. Because when you first see her, and she's in the White House and she's doing a little flashlight thing and she's all badass and her and Jason are killing people on the submarine and she escapes from Leon. It's like, oh, she's so cool. Her character takes a massive dive when they get to her house and her brother is there and like the whole explosion happens. I believe China was gonna kill, like there was something going on. I don't really remember that story beat, but her house is exploded and her, I think it's her grandfather, her father, and her brother who's in the bed dies. And somehow along the way she faints. And it's like, I get it. You're seeing your family die. You're still emotionally attached. I get it. I understand that. But to make her faint, the strong female character that escaped Leon's Super Kennedy, and now she's a wilting flower in his arms. And it just, to me, it's like they didn't know what to do with her character anymore. So, and of course, Leon being a man, it's like, Leon, I'm a woman, save me. And again, that's not to throw no shade on Leon. That's not what I mean. It's just how Capcom handled the character and how they handled Leon. And it's like, why? Like it's narratively it made no sense. It made no sense. And then
Yeah.
to kill her in the way they did it was almost like the hugest fuck you to that character. That and to me it just made no sense. And to me I felt that she had a really good reason for being there and doing what she was doing, but like Tommy said, just somewhere along the way they lost sight of it and it just the story then just made no sense. And then to kill her in the way they did, she dies at the hands of her lover. Like, why kill her? When she's trying to talk him out of it and she's trying to help him, but then you just up and kill her. And it just like, why? And to me, this is why I say she just falls into that stereotypical anime girl character that starts off really cool, declines, and then you just kill her for no real reason. And it's like, you kill her just for the sake of killing another character? Like, I don't know. Am I the only one, Tommy? What are your thoughts and feelings?
I'll be honest, like I really hate to say this, but this is like the thought that keeps coming to my head. She feels like a discount Ada,
Yes!
like essentially, where like the reason that I love Ada so much as a character, even with like her notes and everything, is like Ada is a fully independent person capable of like staying with the rest and always has her own agenda that's
Right.
ongoing with all of her games and plots.
Mhm.
And they showed that with Shenmei. It's just this is all stemming from the bigger issue of the show just had no real time to do anything, so they had to make characters into ultra stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
Shenmei, I feel like her intros great with the White House where they're going through the zombies and stuff, and then her lore stuff is really good with how she's tied to the outbreak and knew all about Wilson and everything, and how she's been keeping her brother, who's basically turned on life support, in her
Right.
grandfather's house for all these years is basically like proof so they can get the chip out of his head to basically expose Wilson and get rid of the corrupt entities within the national government.
Mm-hmm.
All of that was good. It's just like once they had her exposition stuff done, they really had nothing else for her to do with the show. It's not even that I was bothered by the fate or felt that she was inefficient or that she degraded. It's just after episode, like around the halfway point of episode 3, she became just a prop instead of a character was my biggest
Right.
issue.
Right. And oh my God. It's anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
And it just amalgamates to I liked her. I wish they'd done more of her, but I can't really like complain nor praise her inclusion.
And that's kind of the best way to put Shinmei, like honestly. And now let's move on to honestly, only reason why I put Patrick on this list, and let's just be honest about it, because and Tommy's not on board with this, but I just think he's cute and I just like his curly hair. And he was only in the beginning and only in the end. And I just liked him because his hair was curly, and that's really it. So moving on from Patrick. let's talk about Wilson, and then we'll talk about the final character. Um,
Okay.
so, what were your thoughts on Defense Secretary Wilson? What did you think about him as a villain of the show?
Okay, so I really like the vibe that they gave with Wilson, showing powers at play within the US government that are
Yes.
outside the purview of the president and the agents in the field and the people trying to do the good thing. Because that actually does tie into the lore very well with two key factions being Neo Umbrella and Tricell.
Yes.
I'm gonna say though, there's one person that I wish they'd put there instead of Defense Secretary Wilson that I felt would have fit in the same capacity. The only reason that they didn't was I don't think they're going to do anything else with Wilson. But had my boy Simmons been this villain all along and been the one in the background, you know how much infinitely better that would have been.
You know what? Resident Evil 6 has its flaws, but Simmons would have saved the day. But continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so ultimately, while I feel like we're having discount Simmons with Wilson, Wilson was okay. He didn't do anything bad, and he made about all the moves that a character like his character realistically would have done. Like to
Mhm.
him, the thing that I love that he did with Claire was he was never interested in killing Claire. He just wanted to basically get control over Claire with the virus, like he did with the soldiers. And this
Exactly.
makes perfect sense. It's like, why would you kill all of your enemies when you have this virus that you can just plug in them, inhibit in them? Then they basically have to obey your will, otherwise they die. It was a very intelligent move. I really like
Yes.
that move. It's just Wilson is really only just trying to pointlessly start a war with China for real no reason whatsoever. And then once that's been resolved, his character's more or less just a puppet of Tricell that gets shelved away somewhere in the lore, I guess.
Right? Yeah. I Yeah, that's all I really can say about Wilson. I never considered Simmons at all. Like, I just never considered Simmons. I was just like, this just goes to show, like Kami said earlier, the powers that are at play that are outside of the president, and people have their own agendas, people who have power. And I just like, yeah, that's pretty fucked up. And then, like you said, he had no real reason to want to start a war with China other than they were Chinese. That's the only thing, the only conclusion I can come up with. And I really just feel personally that they should have done more with his character. Like personally, because again, this goes back to it's only 4 episodes. Now, had they fleshed this out more, and maybe they could have tied in Simmons, like maybe him and Simmons were working together, like it would have made the story so much more infinite instead of infinite darkness. It would have been infinitely better had they done something like that. And it's just you see, right? You see, Tommy, like I'm just telling you, man, like after you watch this show and then you come back and watch this review, or you watch this review, then you watch the show, you will understand why me and Tommy feel the way we feel because I've been a fan of Resident Evil since it came out in 1996 and I was 11. So I've loved this franchise since then. And then you give me this, and I'm super pumped for it. And this is the result. But that's neither here nor there. Now let's talk about the final character of the episode. And I'm gonna let Tommy talk about this character. So go for it, Tommy.
Okay. Okay. I'm surprised we're really talking about this character at all because this feels like more of an Easter egg than an actual character
Okay.
inclusion. So pretty much is like we get one final scene with Wilson after he's escaped alive because they just couldn't be bothered to kill him, I guess, because they need to have the awesome Rainbow-rific Resident Evil 6 set piece where they fight Jason in like the capsule space and like blow his arm off of like one shot fired from a hip. But
Right?
as much as much as I enjoy that fight scene, and I really do enjoy it, and felt it wasn't that bad. Wilson gets back to like his secret command bunker base place, and
Right?
then a person gives him an inhibitor drug that Wilson had been giving to other people. And then this shows you the other pharmaceutical corporation that Wilson's in cahoots with being Tricell because Wesker gives him the inhibitor. Wesker's here in the scene. We physically see Wesker. He has 2 frames where you see his face and the sunglasses and his hair slicked back, and then he's gone. So overall, I love Wesker. Wesker's honestly, in my opinion, one of the best written just outright evil characters with no real good
Yes.
side to them. And for me, it makes sense from a character standpoint because Wesker is borderline not human in the lore. Like, Wesker is a child that was thrown into the Wesker Project with Spencer and
Mm-hmm.
Marcus and was like one of the two survivors. So for all intents and purposes, he's just a genetic super weapon. So he's only been programmed like a weapon and only acts like a weapon. So that's
Exactly.
why I love Wesker being as evil as he is without any real redemption, is that he's just thinking objectively for his causes. And I love
Mm-hmm.
Wesker so much. It's just, he's really an Easter egg in the show, and that's it. And I really hate that because we can't do anything new with Wesker because in 5 he was dumped into a volcano and had 2 RPGs shot into his eyes. And if you retcon that kind of death, you're just going to piss off more people than do anything good with. So the fact that in the prequel we only get a 2-second cameo is honestly goddamn upsetting.
You be the judge. I agree with you. I'm just gonna be real with you. When I saw the Trisol logo, know who I was thinking to see? Excella. I was thinking to see
Yeah.
her. Maybe she would be there with Wesker, but no, it was just Wesker. And then that was it. The show was over. It was like, wait, what? And I don't know. I feel like it seems more like Wesker was an Easter egg. Tricell and Wesker were Easter eggs and preludes to Resident Evil 5. Because during this time, I think the Nightmare on DLC was like taking place time-wise in the Resident Evil lore. Because I think Jill had already disappeared. And I think, wasn't that like around the time where I don't know if Spencer was
We
still alive during this period.
So I'm thinking that this has to be freshly after Spencer was killed by Wesker, is
Okay.
when I'm thinking that has to be in the lore, because we're definitely post like the Raccoon City stuff and
Hmm.
like the Terra Grigia and Revelations 1 stuff in like 2003 to like 2005. I
Hmm.
think if I'm remembering correctly, Revelations 1 ends with Chris and Jill stacking up on the house going into the Lost in Nightmares DLC.
Yes.
So I think that we have to be within a year of when that happened in 2005 is when I'm thinking the show has to take place.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, because if I remember correctly, and don't quote me on this, children, after the Nightmare on DLC happens, this storyline takes place, and then I think is Degeneration after somewhere in between this is like Resident Evil Degeneration. If you watch the movies that are
Yeah.
canonically or linked up with this show. And personally, I don't know. I'll get to my final thoughts later because I don't want to jump into that just yet. But let's jump forward a little bit. Let's jump into the Easter eggs. Now, during this show, Capcom loves throwing in their Easter eggs. We already talked about Wesker and Tricell are definite Easter eggs. Tommy, can you think of a few more as we go into this?
I really like that these are two really small ones, but if the show is gonna put this little bit of effort, I guess I can too. I
Uh-huh.
really liked how in the beginning of the show when they show the president and that's been like 2 years after Resident Evil 4, that the pictures of Ashley is actually like the same picture that
Uh-huh.
Leon held to the Spaniard in 4 when he's investigating for her. So I
Exactly.
really liked that those stills were reused. I also really liked how they tried to show the president is looking like a younger version of the president in 6 that Leon has to put down to show how
Yeah.
much more of a burden that was. Like, his facial features are the same.
Oh no, I thought that was really cool. And you know what the funny thing is? When I first was seeing the advertisement for the show, I was trying to figure out was it the same president from 6 and 4, and I just didn't have a clue until I saw the show. And you know what the funny thing is? You're right, he actually was a younger version. Then, and for those of you who have never played Resident Evil 6, don't, but maybe watch a Let's Play.
I disagree.
Oh,
But
really?
really, Resident Evil 6 is like in my top 4 Resident Evil games.
Really? Oh my God. I'm so
Really.
sorry. Okay. Well, you know what? I love you more because of that. That's why. Um, but yeah, so if you listen to Tommy, don't listen to Micah. Play Resident Evil 6 and you'll see what we're talking about when you see the president. The other Easter egg that I like is when Claire's at the cabin, the door that you see is actually a door from Resident Evil 7. And the other thing is I don't know if you guys notice things like this, but whenever you pick up an object in Resident Evil and you have to examine it and flip it around, the picture frame that's sitting on the table or little stand, if you notice behind it, there was like a picture inside of it. And for some reason, I don't know why, it made me think about the game when you like pick something up and you have to rotate it and you have to examine and you find
it.
Yeah, and you find an item within the item. I don't know. That's what I was thinking about when I saw that. One of the other really popular Easter eggs, if you notice, is back on the submarine where Leon looks up and he sees the rat on the roof. They even used it in the remade movie with Leon and Claire, where you see the liquor on the ceiling from the original Resident Evil 2 back in 1998. So I thought that was another really cool Easter egg. And I think another Easter egg was the lamp Claire had in her hand, and the phone was from also, I believe, also from Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
And there's quite a few Easter eggs if you pay attention. There's a few more Easter eggs in there. For me, my memory is drawing a blank on some of them, but if you watch the show and you're familiar with the entire series, you'll see things like that more and more pop up in the show. That you'll see like that are like homages to the original games. Am I missing some of the Easter eggs? Because I know I am, for real.
There were plenty of like small Easter eggs there that were nice moments. I'll be honest, when it comes to Easter eggs, I really don't remember a whole heck of a lot of them. Like the four that I remember is like Wesker, Tricell, the president stuff, and the pictures of Ashley being the biggest ones. There were a couple others, like I enjoyed how like the submarine pan looked almost like the submarine pan from Code Veronica quite a bit.
Yes!
And how they were showing like a lot of the iconography, almost like history repeats itself with little Easter eggs like that, where if you've played and read a whole bunch of the other side lore and stuff like that, it was nice. Ultimately, it just, I'm with Micah and that like, I'm drawing a blank on a lot of the Easter eggs. They were there. I remember seeing them in the show. It's just my memory's not really holding with the show that great.
Same. Oh my goodness. So again, watch the show, because I think I remember my friend Link, he's my friend from Barcelona. He also said, Micah, there's so many Easter eggs. I think he counted around 25 Easter eggs, but I could be wrong on that. So if you watch the show and you start looking for those things, you'll find them. Now that we talked about the Easter egg, let's give our overall feelings and the closing of the show. So again, Tommy, I think you're better at this than me. So what are your final thoughts and feelings on this and the final scene of the show? And I'll explain how I feel about it, but go ahead.
Okay. So overall, I don't absolutely hate the show. Honestly, we're still better than all of the live acted Paul Wes Anderson movies. Like, if you really want to torture yourself, just go watch that 6-movie series that just kept getting worse and worse with every entry. I don't think we're in that god awful of territory, but this is definitely the weakest of all of the animated properties that Capcom has put out within the Resident Evil lore. Because, like, when I think back to Degeneration, Damnation, and Vendetta, all of them were much stronger, more well thought out shows because they understood they were just going to be like a 1.5 to 2 hour movie and left it at that and didn't get overly ambitious. The bigger issue is that this show has the ambition and the plot setup of like an 8 to 16 episode show. But at some point, I guess funding got caught, so they went back to 4 episodes and tried to still tried to get like the content of an 8 to 12 episode show in it, to where like plot points will be introduced, then they get thrown off to the side, then they're brought back up and resolved in like 2.4 seconds, or there will be these other plot points that are introduced and just forgot the fuck about, or like they'll like show something and then be like, oh yeah, this is important, but move on.
Yeah.
Like that was one of the biggest issues, is that like Claire's investigative bits were all good and made sense and help explain the story. They're just so few and far in between, because if you really think about it, they could have done and solved the whole mystery of the show within about like 2 episodes. And then the remainder of the show would have just been boring because there's no mystery.
Exactly.
So what they do is they arbitrarily just move Claire to the side, add it here and there, so it's more of just connective tissue and then put the plot into the mess that it ends up being. And comes together for ultimately a good but not well thought out climax, simply because like there's so many points where it's like that wouldn't have happened how it happened even within the confines of the Resident Evil universe. Like I said, with the ship underwater where Leon electrocutes the floor, it's like, great, how are you getting off the ceiling? Or like Claire getting out of the chair. How do you dodge the acid? I don't know, but you did. Good job.
Right. These things don't need explanation.
And then like Jason, I don't know why you didn't kill Wilson, but I guess he can become a legacy character now.
Right? And it's just like, really?
Yeah, so ultimately, I don't hate the show. It's decent enough of a watch so long as you don't think too heavily about it and has good Easter eggs and does set up 5 at least somewhat well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, at the end of the day, if I were going to recommend this to new people getting into Resident Evil, I would not recommend Infinite Darkness right out of the gate. Personally, I'm feeling like the show is more of like a 4 to 6 out of 10, depending on how you feel about it. And it's just good connective tissue for the lore, nothing more, nothing less. And then the ending scene, well, I personally don't think it made Leon the evildoer of the rest of the series. It was definitely like Leon, who's been super intelligent and smart at this point, and like 60% in character with how he acts throughout the rest of the series. He just doesn't give Claire the chip that would have exposed the conspiracy. And I can really only think of about 4 good reasons of doing so that really still aren't that super smart. One, it's a massive conflict of interest for Leon because he does work for the CIA and the Secret Service Division. So that would be him committing treason. Like, I get it. Like, you don't want to be an enemy of the country you're trying to help.
Exactly.
So that makes sense. But at the same time, he could have just told Claire, no, I can't because I'd lose my job and like we'd both be targets, rather than just being like, no, now go fuck off.
Continue.
And then on top of that too, I feel like Leon didn't want to involve Claire because she's going down a different path than Leon.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that was a realistic answer and a reason not to. And then I feel like Leon still would have wanted to show that to the proper people and gotten Chris and the BSAA and stuff involved. And I feel like he still did his part with that chip. It's just him in that moment right there, just being kind of a dickhead about it and going off to the White House, where the White House and him look great, but the trees look like they're rendered in a PS2 game.
You know what?
It was just like the weakest note to end the show on.
And yeah, you know what? I'm going to say that I didn't hate the show either. I just really disliked it for a lot of reasons. But anywho, I would say if you're a fan of Resident Evil and you just love Resident Evil and anything Resident Evil slapped on it, you're just like, give it to me, then enjoy. But if you're new to the entire franchise, do not watch this show until, I would say, you've at least done some research on or maybe played like the remakes. Play the remakes, maybe play some of the classic games if you can get your hands on them. Maybe find some of the old books like S.T. Perry. I would recommend reading her books.
Yeah.
And then
like play 5 and 6. And if you like the series, then go back and watch like Infinite Darkness.
Yeah, because then everything we're talking about that doesn't make sense to you will begin to make sense. And you'll start to see the connections in the story. And you'll say, oh, this makes so much more sense to me now than just watching this and being like, the fuck? Like, you know, you're just confused. I would say, I just wish it was more, personally, because I feel that would, and that's a consistent theme that me and Tommy have been saying, that it should have been more episodes. Personally, it should have been, like you said, an 8 to 12 episode miniseries. It would have made more sense. More fans would have been satisfied personally. And I feel that, you know, that Nick and Stephanie did such a good job reprising their roles as Claire and Leon that when we get so little of Claire, it's just kind of like, what's the point? And like Tommy said, her scenes are so far and few in between. You don't really have time to really enjoy her as a character. And like you said, had you solved it in like episode 2, it'd have been like, okay, what the fuck is Leon doing? You know? And the whole thing where Leon has to save Claire, and like there was just so many issues I had with it. The only one thing I was saying, that this is me being a Claire fan, is that when Leon saves Claire, instead of her doing the typical girl thing of, "Oh, Leon, thank you, let me give you my vagina," whatever, she gives him a look of like, "Yeah, thanks. See you, buddy." I like that they didn't put that in there, and I appreciate Capcom for doing that. And
then she still, I don't mean to interrupt, but then she still has a significant part in the fight and actually helps stop Jason.
Yes, and sadly she gets her arm broke because Jason hurls this bungalow towards her, and she gets out of the way in time, but she still gets her arm broke. But Leon, and again, this is not. I want people to understand. I don't hate Leon. I'm not mad at him. This is how Capcom wanted it, so be it. I'm fine with it. But this dude, Jason, had him by the throat. Okay, he had Homeboy by the throat like he had Shinbei. He dropped him down and said, "I'm going to show you what real fear is," and he's off walking away. I'm like, bitch, you had him in your hand. This could have been over and done in 2 seconds. But whatever. Capcom had to stroke their golden boy, which is fine. I'm no tea, no shade, no pink lemonade. But they drop him down. He goes running off. He shoots him in the arm, like like Tommy said, he shoots him in the arm. Homeboy's dead. He falls in the acid. It's like, really? And then what made it worse is that even though I think Patrick is adorable, he said, "You're a hero. You're a hero." And I'm like, a hero? I'm sorry. Someone press rewind. I see no hero. I see a man fighting for his life to stop a villain. I guess you can call that a hero. But what makes me say Leon to me is the biggest dummy is because you gave Ada the Los Plagas thing, parasite, for her to take to her organization. And I get,
to be fair, that happened at gunpoint, and he didn't have much of a choice.
I mean, be that as it may, yes. But if Leon can get away from Ada when she had a gun at his throat and he had a knife at her neck, and he's like, sorry, and he takes her gun and says, "I don't follow the lead of ladies," which is fine. Again, fine. Plot hole is that you tell Claire no in the most assholey way you can. Instead of, like Tommy said, "Claire, this is too dangerous. Let me do it on my end. Let me find a way to do it on my end," or something. It would have made more sense. But you end it in a way where Claire could have destroyed this organization or the people involved, and that would, of course, plot-wise, it would have stopped Resident Evil 5 and 6 from even making any sense, which, again, I get it, but in the way they do it, they just make Leon, to me, they paint him in a really bad light, because this girl is supposed to be your friend. Explain to your friend why you made this decision, and she probably would have been more happy with the outcome. I'm just saying. But you do it this way, and it's like, Leon, it's like almost like you could say, "Leon, this is your fault. You're not a hero. You just further Jason's theme of fear, spreading fear through terrorism." But it's like, no, you could crush the organizations responsible for this. But again, story-wise, it need to make sense with the overall plot. And again, if you're a Leon fan, Tommy, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to throw no shade on your character. That's not my goal. It's just how the story was written, because I didn't like how they did Leon as a character, because I felt that Leon they should have done better with him. That's just my personal opinion. Yeah. That's what I'm really getting at.
Like I agree with you. Leon really wasn't done much justice of the show. This is probably like the most hyperbolized version of Leon that we've gotten in all of the properties, where they just strip him down to a few core aspects. Overall, it's more of an issue of the show. Like, had they had Chris be Leon's character instead of Leon, it'd have been the same problem. Honestly.
Exactly. But I mean, it is what it is. I would recommend that, if you're, like I said before, if you're a huge Resident Evil fan, watch it. If you're new to the series, go back, play the other games, read the old books, do something, play the original games, play 5 and 6, and then watch Infinite Darkness, and all of the connective tissue will make sense story-wise. I just, again, Capcom execs, Netflix execs, if you randomly see this video, next time stretch it out a little bit more for us, so you have more time to tell your story, unless funding gets cut again, and we understand. And also fix some trees. Fix those trees, man. I was like, what the hell happened to It's like the graphics took a dive, you know? It is what it is.
We're running out of budget if we make this last scene. Just write it quick and end it.
Right? Hurry up before the like we down to $2, man. Let's just get them $2 drees and just put them in there. But that's our review on Resident Evil Infinite Darkness. But you know what I want to know is, what do you guys think? Did you watch the show? Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? You know, do you think me and Tommy are just over exaggerating everything and you feel that we're wrong? You know, let us know in the comment section down below. But you know, before we wrap this up, Tommy, do you have any final closing statements, my dude?
No, like Micah said, I'd love to know your guys' thoughts and opinions on the show if you have watched it, if you agree with our criticisms or disagree, because legit, I do feel like you could defend the show. Again, it wasn't Paul West Anderson levels of absolute garbage.
You're not talking about that.
But that's a whole nother can of worms for a different day. Overall, I've had a blast sitting here with Micah. Honestly, I can talk Resident Evil for hours and hours and hours on end and not be bored.
Same.
Overall, I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great day, amazing life, and if you're not doing anything, please check out my tabletop cam.
Do it! Oh my god, it's so good. I'm gonna tell you guys, I'm just shameless plug. Watch Tommy's Resident Evil campaign. It is amazing. I'm loving it. Hashtag Daniel for the win. Hashtag Gio. Like I support so many of these characters. Alexander has no game, but we praying for that baby to get it together. But anywho, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like our channel, like this video, subscribe to our channels. Links will be down below. Hit the notification bell so you're always notified when me and Tommy are uploading videos just for you. Now, remember those golden rules of washing hands, wearing gloves, and masks so you don't spread the T-virus like everyone else is doing. But until then, I love you to life, so bye! Wow.